Okay, time for an oil change and an oil filter change for my little Husqvana ride-on mower here. First thing I've got to do is take off this little side panel, and I've found the easiest way is just to have a little pry bar here that allows me to pull that off nice and easily. And there I can see the drain plug, which has got a bit more dirt on it than I expected, so I need to go and grab a cloth because I forgot to bring one with me. Okay, give this a little bit of a clean here. On this machine, this drain plug is plastic, not metal, so you've got to be a little bit careful with that so you don't get a bit over excited and end up damaging the plastic components. So Husqvana give you this special tool here called a piece of plastic pipe that you put over the end of the drain, and I find that this little rectangular oil pan here is the easiest. It fits nice and easily underneath the machine. The more car orientated ones are a bit of a challenge to fit underneath here. So then we just have to unscrew our drain plug here, and I'll release the oil filler cap so that air can easily flow in, and then our oil just simply runs out and into the drain. And I can tell by the colour of the oil there it's definitely due for a change. It's done 50 hours on here. I write the hours when I change the oil filter. It's I wanted to change it at 55, but circumstances didn't quite play out that way, so I changed it at 56.8. But the oil filter gets changed every 100 hours and the oil every 50, so it's done 50 hours now since the last oil change, and certainly the oil is looking like it needs replacing. I've just done a little bit of mowing so that the engine is hot, and that just helps the oil to run out more easily because it's hotter, it's more viscous, and will run out more easily rather than if it was cold oil. We're in autumn here at the moment, but we've had a bit of a cold snap, so it's a little bit colder in the mornings at the moment. Nothing terrible, obviously, but it makes a difference when you're trying to change the oil, and A, how long it takes, and two, just trying to make sure all the oil drains out. And if it's a bit warm, then it'll drain out more easily than if it's cold. So just a little top tip, if you like, on that kind of thing. Alright, I'm just going to let that drain for a while now so that I can make sure I've got all the oil out of there. Okay, well the oil has pretty much drained all out now. A couple of little drops still coming out of the piece of plastic tubing here, but nothing too much to worry about. While that was all happening, I gave the oil dipstick a little bit of a clean up, got rid of all of the oily residue that was on it, like it to be nice and clean. Gives me an indication of what's going on the machine. So now I'm just going to remove the old oil filter, which is going to spill oil everywhere. Thank you very much. And I've got some new oil here, of course. I'm just going to put a little smear of oil on the oil seal, the rubber seal that's there, just to help it. And I'm going to put a little bit of oil, not too much, but a little bit of oil in the oil filter. Anyone who's ever done an oil change on a car will know that if you put a bit of oil into the oil filter, it just helps to bring the oil pressure up more quickly. Not good for engines to run without oil and things. Now obviously it depends a bit on the scenario that you have. In this case, because we're putting an oil filter in on the side like this. I could technically put half of the oil into this oil filter, but that may not practically work. So I'm just going to put enough in there to give me a head start so that some oil can start pumping through the engine as quickly as possible when we start things up. Okay, new oil filter on, and it's really important that you try and make sure no dirt gets into anything. Dirt is your greatest enemy of your system. So I'm going to do up this drain plug again. Now remember, it's, as I said before, it's plastic, so don't get too excited. It just needs to be nipped up tight, but not leaned. Oh, there you go. Dry bar's now covered in oil. Remove that. I'm going to wipe off the excess oil that was here, and then a bit later I will degrease that just to get rid of all of the oil that is there, because the oil attracts dirt and dust. And some might argue that leaving the oil on helps prevent rust, but rust is not really likely to be a big issue for me on here because I regularly maintain this, and as long as I'm not scratching the paint off, then it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Alright. It's a bit of a messy business, this oil changing procedure, but that's just what needs to be done. Now this mower is leaning slightly down, the ground is leaning slightly down, so I'm not going to overfill it. I'm just going to fill it up so that it's close, and then when I've got it on more even ground, then I will check the oil and fill it up to the proper full mark. I'm using a 2040 grade oil in here. Husqvana sell and recommend a 1030, but the mower shops tell me that, well, Kawasaki recommend a 1040, and Kawasaki is the manufacturer of the engine in the machine. So I figured that the mower shops must have a bit of an idea what they're talking about, seeing as they have to service and repair them. And so I'm going for the 1040 oil to try and make sure that I give this engine every chance of lasting as long as possible. These things are expensive to replace, and I don't want to replace it unnecessarily. So I'll try and take the recommendations that the service guys give us to try and ensure we get the best return on the investment we make, because everything you do is an investment. Everything you do is an investment. So you want to try and make sure you get the best return on that investment that you possibly can. Alright, we need some more oil in there yet. Trying to be careful not to get oil down into the dirt. Try not to get dirt down into the engine area. It's tempting to just try and pour the oil straight into the filler tube, but it's a little bit windy here, and it's amazing how much that affects the oil going into the filler tube. If you're just trying to pour it straight from the bottle in there, and it'll end up all over the machine. Trust me, I've experienced that before. So particularly on a windy day like today, I am going to use the funnel to ensure that the oil goes into the filler tube and not all over the machine. Okay, we need a little bit more yet. Not too much more, but a little bit more. As I said, I'm not going to fill it all the way right to the brim because the mower is leaning down slightly to the left, and so that's going to give me a false reading. I'll overfill it if I go by the mark there. So I definitely want it to be, say, halfway at least, if not a little bit further, so that when I check it on level ground I can get more accurate readings. Okay, perfect. So I've got about 3/4 full. That's going to be more than enough for starting and running. So I'm going to clean up a few little bits here. I'm going to clean that, and then I'm going to write my hours onto the oil filter, and this part of the service will be done. Changing the oil and the oil filter, really important for the longevity. These are $3,500 or so to replace, just for the engine plus fitting, etc. You've got to get it fitted. So you want to try and make that thing last as long as you possibly can. But I've got another problem with the machine. The drive, the hydrostatic drive, is not operating properly. Doesn't feel like a slipping belt or a problem with the drive itself. And I was talking to the mower guys this morning when I picked up the oil filter, and they said to check underneath here, underneath where the pedal, it's a rocker pedal on this one. It's not two separate pedals like there is on some. So forward and back is on one pedal. And they said we've had a lot of rain over the last 12 months here. The grass is very thick and heavy. And he said what they're finding is the grass is getting up and obstructing the action of the pedal. So you're not getting full drive. So I'm going to have a bit of a look underneath there, and we'll come back and have a look at that after I find out what's going on. Well, okay. I discovered the guys at the mower shop are absolutely right. I had a look down in through there, and now after every time I mow, I give the machine a clean and a blow over with the air, etc., just to try and get all the grass and dirt and etc. off. But there was a massive build-up down there of not just grass but also mud, which it's not because I'm going through mud, but just the dust combined with wet grass is sort of formed up and behind there. And I got my pry bar back out of the oil, gave it a clean up, and was able to remove a considerable amount of build-up that was underneath there. So that's a lesson learnt. I need to, after each mow, just double check that I'm not just blowing air in and around here, but it's actually getting that debris out from underneath inside the back of the engine and under the subframe section here, which was preventing the pedal from working properly. I've just taken it for a bit of a drive up my hill, which is around 12 to 15 degrees in slope, which is fairly significant. So it requires a bit of capacity to drive up there. This morning I could barely get up there at all, but now I just drove up normally. So that seems to have sorted the problem. I've written on my oil filter, so I don't have to try and remember when the next oil change is due. I can see quite clearly, put my cover back on, job done. Ready to go again next time I need to mow. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.